What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learning Quick. Super excited to have Kyla Gregory on as a guest today to talk about making a late career change to get into tech. I followed you, I've followed each other, we've chatted back and forth on Twitter for a while. This is the first time, like most of my guests, that I've actually gotten to talk video-wise, which is pretty cool. But anyway, welcome to the stream, and do you want to give people just a little bit of an introduction to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thank you, James. My name is Kyla Gregory. I live in Kansas City, and I'm currently working as a front-end developer at Andrews McNeil Universal.
Sweet. And we just talked about this. I can't remember if we were live when we did it or not, so I don't know if other people that are watching know. But you're in Kansas City. Kansas City Developer Conference is coming up in September. Assuming we're okay COVID-wise and things don't change, I will be
Yeah.
in Kansas City in the middle of September to speak at KCDC, and then maybe we'll get a chance to meet in person, which I feel like is a really unique opportunity after being virtual connections with people for so many months at a time.
Yeah.
Meeting people now is a little more awkward than it used to be, I think, but it should be a fun conference. I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I didn't know it existed, so I'm looking forward to going.
Yeah.
And I would love to. Yeah, if we could hang out, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
You would be the first developer I've met on social media that I get to meet in person.
Yes, love
cool.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of like getting into my role as a developer advocate. That's one of the huge benefits of going to conferences is you get the opportunity to meet the people that you've seen on Twitter, that you've watched their YouTube videos, that sort of stuff. And it's something I've really missed. And I think a lot of the people who are conference speakers have really missed that opportunity as well. So I am really excited to be back in person again. Fingers crossed that nothing changes to be able to do that. So we had a question from Mac, which I think is kind of the perfect example of what we wanted to start with anyway. So before we get into your transition into tech and what you do now, what were you doing before? What's your background and what's your experience?
Let's see. I don't know how far back I need to go, but
all the way. Whatever.
All the way.
Yeah.
I was born in 1987. All right, let's see. So my dad was in the military. Ever since I was little, we moved around a ton, settled in Missouri. And then I married my husband, who was in the military, moved around a ton again. Within that time, I've done everything from make tacos at Taco Bell to cut hair as a beautician. I'm still pretty good at it. So I was a beautician for a few years, and then, oh man, what year was it? I'd say we were living in Florida around, I want to say it was like 2014, 15, something like that. I started working as a teacher. While I was cutting hair, I just loved having kids in my chair. I thought they were just super cute. And I was like, it'd be really cool to work with kids. And so I started working at like a daycare. I was a teacher. I taught 12 2-year-olds, and I did that for quite a few years. And that was super fun. Eventually, we moved to Kansas City, and I continued working with children, teaching for a while. And then I guess I just wanted a change. I wanted something new, something challenging. And so I kind of left this part out. But a couple years ago, when we were still living in Florida, I dabbled in programming a little bit. I came across a website. Yeah, okay. There was a website called edX.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yep.
edX.org. Yeah. And I thought it was super neat because there were just a ton of different classes you can take, so many things you can learn for free, and I thought that was really awesome. So I found this CS50 course by Harvard, and I thought, I know nothing about computers, nothing at all. No, I know a lot of programmers now have experience maybe when they were younger, they kind of dabbled in programming, but I had zero knowledge, nothing. And I thought it was intriguing. And so I took a little course, and then I was done with that. Didn't plan on pursuing a programming career. It was just for fun. So that was back when I lived in Florida. So then when we moved here and I was teaching, and I decided, I could use a change. I love my kids. I love blowing bubbles and playing with Play-Doh, all that fun stuff. But I needed a challenge. And I remembered that I had, taken that course. And so I figured, maybe I'll try again. What have I got to lose? So I got myself a laptop and brought it into work and started studying HTML and CSS during nap times. So
Nice.
2-hour nap times while it was super
It's
quiet and everyone was
plenty of study
asleep.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, the most annoying part of that was actually the coworkers were always trying to talk to me while
Yeah.
I was studying.
You're like, can't you
I was
see
like,
I'm changing
this
my
is
career
serious.
here? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Maybe they didn't think anything would come of it, but yeah, I was able to study a ton. And then COVID hit, and my workplace shut down for 2 months, and so I had basically 2 months to just dig deep and learn everything I could. So I got a computer desk and monitors and everything, and started learning React, and I made a GitHub profile so I could start, displaying my work, and it just blew up from there, basically.
I love
So
it.
yeah,
And I love, so you started, which this is something I'm so excited about in this industry. You started with a free resource. Like I've told people, especially like if anyone's interested in going to a boot camp, like a paid boot camp that could be relatively expensive, that can absolutely be worth it for you. But you might as well take advantage of the quadrillion different free resources that are out there before deciding you want to invest the money, just to get a feel for it, right? Like there's way too many free resources, YouTube videos and edX and free code camp. There's way too many things out there not to get a decent idea of if this is something you're going to enjoy before you actually invest money. And there's different progressions of that. You can do the free resources. I literally have changed my career off of $10 courses on Udemy. Like I had never done anything web development. I took the web
yep,
developer boot camp for $10 off Udemy by Colt Seal, which I recommend to everyone. And from that point on, I was like, I love web development. I love everything about this. And that's what I do and talk about today. So it was $10 that literally changed my life. And like you mentioned, you didn't have any experience before taking that course. I didn't have any experience before I declared computer science, having no idea what it was in college. And I enjoyed it. Obviously, it's worked out for me, but I had no experience. I'd never done anything. Most people had been like editing their MySpace pages, like messing with HTML
right,
and CSS. I'd never done any of that stuff.
yeah,
And yeah, so I kind of got in a different way, but from the perspective of having no experience. That was
yeah.
definitely similar. And you mentioned the CS50 class. That's actually it's in C or C++. Is that right? Language wise?
Um, I don't remember. I have to. It was years
Yeah.
ago. I just remember using this little. I think it was like a little platform or something called Scratch. You know what
Oh,
Scratch
cool.
is, like for
Yeah.
kids.
Yep.
It's
And
cool though. It was neat. You kind of plug and create your
mhm.
own. I created a really cheesy little game. I thought was pretty good.
And that's such, so I have actually been on the other side of this where I have taught game making using a different tool but similar to people who have no programming experience. And I have always said like I could teach a CS 101 class with that, because and it would be way more fun and way more entertaining and way more understandable for people than a regular textbook. So I
Yeah,
love giving people that, like, here's your ability to write code, even if it's not code, like it's drag and drop stuff, but also see how the things you do, the blocks that you put together, to see how they impact, to see what they accomplish, and then actually show that stuff with other people. That's why I fell in love with web development, because I could build something and then immediately share it with the entire world.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
There's a question in the chat
Sure.
about what age is how was it phrased? What age is too old to transition into? When is late too late to for a change? Probably in this conversation specifically to getting into tech, but I'll let you answer that and then I'll jump in after you.
Well, I don't think it's ever too late.
Yeah.
Ever, 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 ever. Never ever. I'm how old am I? 33, I think. I was 32. No, maybe I was 33. I don't know anymore. But
Somewhere in there.
yeah, yeah, early 30s when I got my first job. And for me personally, I went the self-studying route. I had all of these different, like there was Scrimba and Free Code Camp, just a bunch of different ways to learn programming. And it took me, I know everyone's different and there can be some luck involved, but for me it took about a year, just a full year of nonstop study
Hmm.
every weekend, every free moment, just constantly studying with the hopes that I would get hired. I could start applying within around a year. And I was fortunate enough to get hired after, about a year
Hmm.
of doing that. So if you're willing to put in the time, then I don't think it matters how old you are, like you can learn for free, so you're not really losing out on anything, you know.
Yeah, the opportunity I think is absolutely there, and I was gonna say the exact same thing. So I think we're in agreement that it's never too late if that's something that you want to do. I think it is important for people to understand that like it takes a lot. Like making that transition is not easy. It's absolutely doable for everyone, regardless of your experience, but it takes a lot. And you mentioned your process being a year. I just wrapped up a boot camp that was 6 months plus a few extra months of extra stuff. Several people, a lot of people have gotten jobs. Some people are still looking after now, not quite a year. So I guess it's been 9 or 10 months. And I think like a year of working really hard is a reasonable goal to give yourself. It may work out a little bit earlier depending on what happens. It may take 2 years. It may take a while.
Hmm.
But I
Yeah.
will say, I think for the people who really need a change after making that change, everything that I hear is that it was absolutely worth it. Especially especially if maybe you don't have like a stable job or stable income, or you want to make more money, or you want to have better benefits, or you want to have better flexibility. Like you can accomplish all those things if you put in the work, and it may take 6 months, a year, 2 years. It may take a while, but
Yeah.
I think most people would say it's been worth it for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. For me, that's the case.
Yeah, good. And so I want to talk more about you getting into your first role and second role. We'll talk about it in a second. But there's a
Sure.
question from Pokeballs, which I love the name, by the way. I don't. Are you a
Nice.
Pokemon? Did you play Pokemon at all growing up? It was a huge thing for me.
I watched Pokemon a
Nice.
lot, and my brother had the little
The
GameCube. No,
Game Boy.
Game Boy. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I would steal it from him from time to time, but I did
Nice.
love the show.
Hmm. I didn't. I watched less than I played. Like I played the game all the time, and I had a bunch of the cards. Which, by the way, I turned 30 in February, so we're in the same general time frame. And Avnish
Okay.
commented that according to the year you said you were born, you should be 33 because there was some
Thank you.
uncertainty.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of stopped keeping track after 30.
After you're like, it is what it is. Um, so the question from Pokeballs is, and I don't know how much you'll be able to answer this or not, but what
Sure.
jobs would you apply for and not apply for? Maybe what kind of things would you take into account for potential jobs if you're in your 50s? Obviously, you're not. So we're talking someone that's even further along in their life and careers. Pokeballs is saying, I'm assuming you'd steer away from startups just because there's less risk. You're probably not at that age looking to take a risk. Any thoughts on like did your experience, did your previous jobs, were there any specific things that you knew you did or did not want in getting into a first tech role?
Um. Well, looking for my first tech role, I didn't want to be picky. I was just too eager to get hired anywhere. But, looking back now, I suppose, with startups, you're probably going to end up being a lot more busy and it's going to demand a lot more from you. Maybe you'll end up working more hours, weekends, things like that. So I think if that's not something you are into,
Hmm.
then I would maybe not apply to any startups. Um, yeah,
I think
maybe.
that's the biggest thing that I would lean towards as well is especially in a startup, you're more prone to saying the like, all right, we got to work as hard as we can to get this thing going. And at 50, like you could have kids, you could have grandkids, your goal could be to have more time off to travel with your family or by yourself or whatever. So I think part of like, what do you want your lifestyle to be like? If you've got nothing else going
Yeah.
on and you really want to like just learn as much as you can and be a part of a potential product that's going to make a lot of money and that kind of stuff, that could be a great opportunity. But my guess at 50 is that's probably not the kind of lifestyle that you're looking for. And I think one of the cool things, I was at FedEx prior to joining Auth0 a year and a half ago. I mean, it was a pretty clear cut 9 to 5, right? Like you came in at 9, you left at 5, and that was it. And you worked hard while you were there, but that was it. And you have your nights and weekends available. You can go pick up kids from daycare if you need to, flexibility wise. Like you can do all those things and still make solid money. So I would say, yeah, I think just thinking about what you want your lifestyle to be like, and ask about those things culturally in interviews. What is your culture like here? How often do people work late? How often do people work on the weekends? What are the expectations for those kind of things? Are important questions to ask for any role, but
Yeah.
especially I think as you're getting, well, I don't know that really changes honestly based on your age. I think that's probably a universal thing, and
True.
I think it's important to ask regardless of your age. Your response to what's important to you might change based on your age.
Yeah.
Todd Libby is in the chat asking what doesn't matter anymore after 30. He's catching up on the chat, and you were saying after 30, it's
Oh,
you're just above 30, and that's it. There's no specific number
yeah.
necessary.
Yeah. Once I hit 30, it's just like,
Yeah,
I'm in my 30s. Whatever.
I did it, and I guess like 40 will at least be some sort of acknowledgement.
Sure. Yeah.
Todd is in the chat. He is 50. So, Todd, if you have any advice on like opportunities or things that maybe you would consider in looking for opportunities, being in your 50s, feel free to share that in the chat as
Yeah.
well. That was one of the questions. So the next one, you talked about like a lot of resources that you went through, kind of starting with the CS50 course, getting introduced, then taking it more seriously during COVID, which I never want to undersell how negative and terrible COVID has been for so many reasons. But
Right.
hopefully, like one of the, I hate to even phrase it this way, but one of the things that I think worked out is you got the time to dedicate in that 2 months to learning. And I would
Yeah.
imagine like that amount of time dedicated to learning really made a difference. But what was it? What was the first role that you got into? Like what were the interviews like, and what was it like getting into that first role?
The first role, um, let's see here. So I started looking for jobs and sent out a ton of applications. And uh, my resume I redid at least a million times.
Fair.
Sorry, my
A
dog.
dog, yes. I've got she's kind of blended in, but Sevi is laying on the couch back there.
Yeah. Aw.
Named after Severus Snape, if you're a Harry Potter fan. I don't know.
Massive, massive
Yes.
Harry Potter fan.
Same here. Same here.
Oh my gosh. Um, where was I?
Looking
Where
at
was
applying for when you're
Oh,
applying for
right.
jobs and changing your resume and
Right.
that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. God. A majority of the time I'd send out these, I'd fill out these applications and then get sorry, we're not going to hire you, da da da. And knowing that they had not interviewed me or actually seen me or talked to me, I figured it had to do with my resume. So I was constantly redoing that all the time. And while I was having some issues with that, trying to figure out what I could do to get hired, a lot of people said another good way was to reach out, go to like meetups, get to know people, that's another good way, make connections. And so I kind of was able to do that. With COVID, it was a little difficult. A lot of the meetups were mostly online, not in person, which is fine. And anyway, I was on the I think it's Casey Tech Slack channel.
Nice.
And a guy had posted in the jobs section that he was looking to hire maybe 1 or 2 junior developers, and that they'd be working with Google Cloud Platform and Vue, and I think Firestore, and maybe a few other things. And initially, when I saw that, I was like, "Ooh, I've worked with Firestore, but not not a lot of the other stuff. Like
Yep.
Vue, I've heard it's fairly similar to React, which I had experience with, so maybe it'd be okay. So I messaged him and I said, hey, I see you're looking for a junior. This is the experience I have, and this is what you're looking for. Do you think it'd be worth me even applying? And he was like, yeah, go ahead and apply. Actually, send me your resume, and I'll pass it. I'll pass it over and see how that goes. And surprisingly, it went well. Um, from there, I did like, gosh, like 3 different interviews. The technical interviews, I actually don't think I did very well. The questions were hard, but
Was this
I
like
did.
was it like a whiteboarding thing where you having to write out
I
code?
mean, in a way. So I did the technical interviews with 2 different developers at 2 different times online, and it was in like Google Docs or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was it was weird, but it was like, it had like I think they were like, they gave me, they were like, given this, how do you do this? And I had to just kind of like type it out there in Google Docs. And I was like, that
Which
was
is
weird, but
very hard, especially for me. Like I am intentionally very dependent on my editor on VS Code with auto completion and all that kind of stuff. Like I am
yes,
very intentionally dependent upon it, which makes those sort of situations much more difficult and much more nerve wracking because then you start to second guess everything you know, I think.
for sure, for sure. Yeah. So luckily, I understood what they were asking of me both times, and I knew what I needed to do to get there. And so I was able to kind of, uh, you know, be vocal and say, okay, this is what you need. This is what I should do. I'm just not quite 100% sure how to get there. And so we kind of worked through the process, and somehow they liked me enough to hire me. I mean, I think it actually went quite well. Um,
Well,
and so,
that's one thing I try to, maybe I'm pushy and it's not needed sometimes, but one of the things I try to really call out for people is like changing the way they talk about themselves. And so your perspective is like, I'm not really sure how this worked out, but people aren't giving away jobs and paying people money for no reason. Like it's 100% because it was earned. So even though you may not feel like you were prepared or you may not feel like it was the best or whatever, like you earned it. And I don't know, I think it's worth just kind of considering how you think about yourself in those situations, but making sure that you give yourself the appreciation for actually having earned those opportunities, if that makes sense.
that's true. That's totally true. That's something I am trying to work on
Hmm. And for what
and
it's worth,
continue with.
yeah, yep. For what it's worth, I have to like mentally talk myself up to, like everyone does it, but it's nice to have someone kind of say, no, like you really, like you earned this, that you're here because you earned it.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. So it went well, and I ended up getting a call from the lead, who was the guy that I had reached out to on Slack that hired me, and he was
Nice.
like, "We're gonna take you on. We'll do a 4 month contract, and just kind of see how things go, and it'll be our first apprenticeship." So this company had never done apprenticeships before. They were hiring interns, but had never done anything like that. So I would have been like their test apprentice,
Hmm.
if you will. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. I was super excited. I went in, and I was just happy every day. I know people say they have, they get really nervous and have like that imposter syndrome when
Hmm.
they go in somewhere. And I didn't have that, simply because I went in knowing that I was a junior
Yeah.
and knowing that it was my first job and knowing that they knew that.
Hmm.
So I didn't feel that way, at least not initially. So it was a good experience. When I first went in there, I was very excited.
And so that's one of, I think it's one of the things that people are unsure about in their first role is exactly what you said. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about how a lot of the responsibility falls on the company and the people within a given team to support people, entry level developers, people that are starting out their careers with their first job in programming. So what was that 4 months like? How did that 4 months go?
Well, So I got hired to be an apprentice at the same exact time another guy got hired. He had just finished college. You know, he got a CS degree, and so this was his first job as well. So we started at the same time, and basically we were given our first project to work on together. And initially I thought it was really cool because even though there were 3 other developers there initially, and then they hired us too. So when they weren't available, those 3, it was him and I. We could kind of learn together, you know, and work on this project together. And that was really, really nice. And almost immediately, we started on that project. Like the onboarding was maybe a day, maybe 2, at least that I remember.
Yep.
You know, it was really short. They had like a Notion thing and like a list, you know, of things that they use. But I was kind of thrown into the deep end, which is totally fine. I had no idea what to expect, you know, as for my first job. And so we just got started immediately and started working on the project. And it was just a lot. I was overwhelmed with a lot of information, but I was okay with that. You know, it was a lot.
Yeah, that kind of makes me like, I think back to, we talked about this a little bit beforehand. When we would hire someone new on our team at FedEx, like one of the things I'm particularly interested in, it's why I create videos, it's why I give talks, it's why I do this sort of stuff, is working with other people first, and then teaching and helping other people learn and come on board. So you talking about diving into something in a day, like this was a weeks long process of getting adjusted, understanding the things we're working on, understanding the technologies and how they fit together, and that kind of stuff, going through like hours of explanations and one-on-ones and whiteboarding sessions and that kind of stuff. So yeah, actually we've got a comment from Code with Kenny, first time chat. Code with Kenny, thanks and welcome. Best way to learn, they're saying, is to jump right in. And I agree to a certain point, but I do think it takes a lot of responsibility on the company and the people around you in terms of mentorship to help make that process as easy as possible. And so the diving in, I think, makes sense, but I think you have to give and help provide the tools to make that the jumping into the deep end successful, and to make sure that if you are giving the like go ahead to jump into the deep end, that people know that there's floaties or whatever. Like basically you can't mess up. I think you want to set people up to let them give things a shot, let them experiment, let them write and tinker and mess with code, but make sure it's in a safe space where if they mess up, it's not a mess up. It's some sort of learning experience. And I think that's not always the case. I think it is easy for places to have a pretty quick blame culture. Instead of a safe space, providing the safe space, and then just learning opportunities from messing up, whatever that may be.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, it wasn't long after I had started that the team lead quit. He left and moved to a different company. And so then it was basically just those 2 initial developers in charge of us 2.
Yeah.
And it just became overwhelming, I guess, for them to try to take on his responsibilities, as well as us asking questions, needing help. It ended up being a lot. And then another thing I noticed was my apprenticeship was actually no different from the other guy that they hired. You know, they hired him, you know, full time, and my apprenticeship wasn't any different. So I thought that was kind of odd, you know. Definitely could have been some work, you know, could have fixed it up a little bit, but yeah, it was definitely quite the learning experience.
Yep. And then, so you finished the 4 months, and then you started looking, and maybe leading up to you finishing that, but you started looking for another role. So what was the search process like at that point? And was there anything you did differently the second time around, searching for a new role that you didn't do or did do, and that you didn't do the first time and did the second time, or vice versa, if that makes sense?
Well, to be perfectly honest, this one fell in my lap.
Yep.
Um, I did start applying, kind of doing the same thing I did initially. Sending out resumes, things like that. But it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks prior to the end of my 4 month contract when a guy from HR at my current company reached out and said, "Hey, are you looking for a position as a front end developer? Or do you know anyone that is?" And I was like, "Well, that could not have worked out any better." So I was like, "Yeah, I am actually," and we connected, and it just went from there. It was pretty smooth sailing, and I know that's definitely not going to be the case with a lot of people, but I was very fortunate.
Yeah. Well, and so like that specific instance being smooth sailing doesn't quite account for all the other work that you put in, right? Like you had applied to a bunch of different roles, I think, that you either didn't hear anything back from or just got kind of a generic no and no feedback or anything. So like
Yeah.
that, I think that goes to show that like it's kind of, especially getting started, it's a numbers game, but also more importantly, and this goes back to the first role, is a big reason why you got visibility, the opportunity to interview for that role was being engaged in the Slack community. It sounds like, and those are the types of things. Like I think it's almost impossible, to be honest, to get that first role without having some sort of community engagement somehow. Like almost impossible
Yeah.
because you apply blindly, people don't care. They go through automated filters in HR and stuff. But if you have one person that can say, like, yeah, we should interview her because I've heard her speak, or I have heard her talk about stuff, or I've seen her help someone else, or I've seen something she built. If you have one person that can at least help you get the interview, that's all you need, is the opportunity to go in there and hopefully crush it. Or like that interview is a learning opportunity if it doesn't go so well for the next one. So like the smooth sailing for this second one, I think is probably more of a testament from all the other work that you had put in, and especially like having a little bit of the community engagement and awareness, because that sort of stuff I think goes much longer, much farther in the process than even your resume does, at least to get in the door for an interview.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
When the recruiter reached out to you about the second role, what was that, on LinkedIn or was that in Slack, or where was that one?
So in that particular instance, it was on LinkedIn.
Sweet.
Um, and so I was definitely working on perfecting my LinkedIn profile a little bit. Did that. And then I was also, I had my first job. So I do wonder if having, at least once you get that first job, if it does make it even a little bit easier, to get hired from then on out, even if it was only 4 months.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not sure, but
I
yeah,
think,
yeah. In that case, it was LinkedIn.
yeah, fair enough. And I don't know how far you'd gotten in the perfecting of your LinkedIn process, but paying attention
Mm-hmm.
to it goes a lot. Like regardless of how far you got, like just that's something that you had in your mind, I think is really important, and it's something that often gets overlooked. I don't know if you follow Danny Thompson. I
Danny.
met, yeah, everyone does.
Yeah.
So Danny's actually
Oh,
here in Memphis. Danny and I are pretty good friends, and
oh, cool.
he's always talked about that. He was one of the TAs in the boot camp that we taught together a few months ago, and he talked about a lot of things that were very important. LinkedIn and the networking aspect, being in the community, are all ones that he is certainly super passionate about, and then I am as well. Because again, if you're just applying blindly, if you don't have any sort of natural visibility, it's just really really tough. And I think one of the things you've done, at least, which is how we got to know each other from the little back and forth we've had, is just being present and active on Twitter. Like I don't think it has to be a huge thing. I don't think you need to be Twitter famous, but if you're active, you get a little bit of visibility that other people just wouldn't have, just because they're not present. So has Twitter been an intentional thing for you? Are you trying to learn in public, to share in public, to engage? Is there anything intentional about it, or just something you naturally kind of took up?
I guess initially, I started using Twitter as a way to follow not just programmers, but women
Hmm.
programmers.
Awesome. Yeah.
Um, just because I kind of heard and knew that there are less, you know, female programmers than
Yep.
men. And so I wanted to find people online specifically Twitter, that I could, listen to and learn from and kind of see how they live their lives and if it affects them in any way. And so I kind of started there, and then just it progressed, and I just started following more and more people. Um, I tend to lurk in the shadows. So for the most part, it was just kind of following people and then, communicating a little bit. At one point, I had considered maybe starting like a blog or something, because I know that using something like that to teach others is a great way to learn yourself, and I knew that would have been just wonderful, but I haven't worked up the courage to do it yet. So that's maybe something I'll do eventually. But right now, social media has just been a great way for me to stay up to date, with the newest technologies and learn from other people and make friends. And that's what I really love about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you're kind of lurking, I mean, there's the old. I feel like cliches are not actually cliche. Like I feel like cliches are often really true, and there's a cliche of like, I don't know what the phrase is, but basically like follow the person that you want to be, or pay attention to the person that does the job that you want to do. And if you want to be a woman in tech, like what better people to be paying attention to every day than successful women in tech?
Yeah.
And that's so yeah. I think that visibility, at least mentally for you, not externally people looking to you, but opening your mind, getting a feel for what are the technologies that people are using, how are people conducting themselves, what stories do they have about being a woman in tech, positive or negative. There's lots of kind of eye-opening stories I think that are out there that a lot of people have shared more and more, which is good just to kind of realize I think the state of tech. And I think that openness has changed a lot, changed in awareness, I think at the very least, and hopefully
Yeah,
actions. But it's good to
definitely.
have that transparency. It's good for you to kind of learn from them and their experiences, and then on the technical side, like what's their history, what's their background, that sort of stuff. So even if you're not like actively contributing, you just kind of soaking it all in, I think is obviously still a very valuable thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been really nice. There's some awesome people on Twitter. You included.
Well, thank you. Yeah, same. Yeah, it's kind of it's really cool for me to get to do streams like this again. Like we've chatted a little bit back and forth. Oh gosh, here it starts. I'll get to that in a second. But um, you and I have chatted back and forth, not a ton, but some. And it's just so cool to be able to like have a video chat and then maybe get to see each other in person in a couple of months at KCDC.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Developer Cam said, I asked in the chat a little while ago if anyone had done a whiteboarding interview recently. And Developer Cam said recently he had applied blindly for a role, did the whiteboard challenges, then didn't hear back. And he said, that's okay. Got a lot more work in my current job anyways. Unfortunately, that's it happens really often where you don't hear anything back. And I feel like that's really terrible for the hiring experience because I know it's easy to get super defeated when you apply for a bunch of roles, you don't hear anything, or you get an interview, you get turned down, and you don't get any feedback. And I think
Yeah.
legally some companies don't do feedback. I don't know the implications legally of that, but I've heard companies have like hard rules about not giving feedback. But that just makes it so tough because like the you want to have a positive attitude and turn it into a learning opportunity, a growth opportunity of like, here's some things I can work on. But if they don't give you any feedback and you just hear no it or nothing, it's really unhelpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It would be ideal if everybody would kind of say, why,
Yeah.
what you could do to make it a little bit better so that you might get hired the next time. That
Yep.
would be nice.
Agreed. Absolutely. Pavi is asking, what would be a good blogging platform? I think some people were saying they should start a blog as well, which I would highlight. Like, I know the being nervous about it is certainly understandable. I think your learning experiences would be great to have in a blog format. I think lots of people would benefit from it. So I think you would do great. But someone
Yeah.
was asking, or Pavi was asking, um, what would be a good blogging platform? So I'm a big advocate for Hashnode. I think their platform as a whole is amazing, and their community focus I think has been Just really great. I love the things that they're doing in the community, and they really stand out to me as a platform that I would like to kind of push people in the direction of. So it's free to get started. It's really easy to use, and there's lots of really cool features that come along with it, Pavi, if you're interested in getting started. Um, Pavi also asked about Dev.2. Dev.2 is great as well. Hashnode has just really stood out to me from a community and tooling perspective in the last 4 or 5 months. So yeah, I think those are the two most popular options, I would say, is Dev.2 and Hashnode. And I've just been a bigger fan of Hashnode, not for anything bad of Dev.2. Just been a bigger fan of Hashnode. So the I kind of paused a second ago and said I would come back to it, but somebody has, who was it that developer Cameron has redeemed his points for 5 push-ups. Just in case, I'll give a minute. Does anybody else have 2,000 points that they would like to redeem and put these together for for a bigger one? I'll give a second just in case. And then Mac in the chat mentioned, especially with the hackathon coming up from from Auth Hero. So this hasn't officially been announced yet, but Hashnode's been running hackathons with other companies monthly for the past 3 or 4 months, and Auth0 is going to be the next co-hackathon host thing. So it's going to be an Auth0 Hashnode hackathon starting August. August? Is that what month we're coming up on? August 1st for the month of August, which would be pretty sweet. So keep an eye out for the announcement post from Hashnode. If you have any questions, anybody in the chat about Auth0, how to get started, resources, things like that, just make sure to let me know. It should be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to doing that. Are you okay? So I think you said you were gonna watch. So I'm gonna change. I've got, if you can see this camera, it's on like a mic arm, so which means I can move it around pretty easily.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna lower that down ish to the floor, and then give me a second while I switch the cameras. I still need to set this up to be some sort of automated thing. But let me switch to that camera. Is that pointed to the floor? I think that's about as good as it gets. There's my office chair that I'm not using right now. And Zane says that he is 1,600 points short, which is it costs 2,000. So it's actually very short, but okay. So I will do 10 push-ups and I will be back. And Mac is going to clip it so we can save this for everyone else to watch later on. All right.
Yay. All right, I'm expecting him to do one arm. Just kidding. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How many are we doing again?
It might have been 11. I've kind of lost count, but I wanted to make sure I at least got 10, or else I knew people would give me shit about it.
You did a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's tough. Especially like I can do 10 push-ups, obviously, but I also get a little winded after, and then I have to come back and talk.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have this it's set in my head that I can do 12 and only 12.
Nice.
Doesn't matter. I can't go over, but
nice.
Yeah.
I could. 20 is really hard. I could probably do maybe 25, although I kind of doubt it now. Like at one point I could, but not anymore. But I definitely would have a hard time coming back to a stream after doing 20. I'd be very winded.
Sure. Yeah. And a good way, maybe not for you, but for anyone who wants to get into push-ups, is to do elevated push-ups. You know, if it's too difficult to do it flat, to have your upper half raised on something higher. It makes it a lot easier. It's a good way to work your way into push-ups.
Absolutely.
I suck at them, so it's something I have to do.
Yeah. And then you could go the opposite way and like do them on
feet up.
Either have your feet up or just like put your hands on weights to add to like give it more vertical space for you to go down, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think it's the same or a similar idea. That may not be true. No, it's probably different.
I don't know.
anyway, yeah, if people are looking for a challenge, either one of those would be great.
Yeah.
um, so I getting how are we doing on time? Probably close to wrapping up, but I wanted to get a quick check in on like what kind of things are you doing at your role now? I think it's only been like maybe a month or a few weeks. How long has it been?
It's yeah, it's been just over a month
Sweet.
at
Yeah.
my
So
current role.
yeah. Yeah. So what are you doing in the role? And then I think the last question is, do you have any vision for what you want to do longer term? I don't know, maybe it's just get better at programming. That's a reasonable goal, but do you have any idea of like what would be next steps for you, I guess?
Sure. Yes, so at my current role, I am working on a project. I don't know how specific I can go, so I probably don't want to go too specific with
Fair
it.
enough.
But we're working on building out a website that is going to be super fun for people to use. We're using on this particular project React and Next.js, which I am new to, and I'm really, really enjoying it. It's
Yeah,
super cool.
I think you messaged me about Next.js and I was like, yep,
Hmm.
it's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. When I interviewed with them, they were asking me if I had used it, and I said no, and they were like, "It's really cool because you don't have to use like React Router, like it's
Hmm.
already got the routes, you know." And I just was like, "Wow, that's awesome." And so I've been working with that. This role is quite different for me compared to the last job. I was working full stack, so I was doing a little bit of front and back, and here it's just front end. I'm on the front end team, so it's kind of nice to focus a little bit more, you know, on the front end specifically. And so I've just been, you know, chipping away at the project, getting that done, and it's been really, really fun. I can't wait to you know, share it with everyone when it's all done.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
That sounds like a fun world to be in, the React and Next space. That's certainly, if I were to build an app, it would definitely be in Next.js right now.
Yeah. 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 It's awesome. Yeah. And the company is amazing. Like the Andrews McNeil Universal, they publish stuff like Garfield and
Cool.
Calvin and Hobbes, and they bring, yeah, comics and games and stuff to you. So it's really neat. It's pretty cool.
Well, I feel like that even takes it to the next level, especially if you can work at a company where you're excited about the stuff that they produce, like whatever you work on. And it's one of the things that I encourage people to. Like, I have a big interest in sports and basketball. Like, what could be cooler than me like working for the NBA or something like that? Like doing combining things that you enjoy. Like, I want to be a programmer. I want to use those skills. I want to have that sort of career, but can it be with a company that also does something that you're already excited about? I feel like that would make it even easier to do your job and to be excited to do your job.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's why I love it so much already.
Yeah.
It's so nice. So yeah, just working on that project for now. And future goals, kind of like what you said, is just continuing to up my skills because you know I feel like in that 1 year of learning, I ran through a lot of stuff really quickly, and some things stuck and some things did not. So I'm constantly refreshing, you know, trying to, you know, just continue learning, and I'm okay with that.
Good. Yeah, I love that. And that's one of
Yeah.
the things I tell my boot camp students as well, is like you're not done with the learning process. There's like the stuff you think you've learned, you need to reiterate that for yourself over the course of a long time.
Yeah.
And then you're never done learning. Like, that's kind of the cool thing about the industry, is there's always something new to learn and take on. So it never really gets old, which is one of the things that I really love about it.
Yeah.
Nikki T, who's in the chat, says, gotta run. Take care, everyone. See you, Nikki T, later.
Bye, Nikki.
And then I guess the last two things is starting to do, I haven't like formally done these that often, although I need to pay more attention to it, but like a soapbox section where you get the opportunity to just share something that you're excited about, or that you're passionate about. And the notes that you sent, just the idea of like turning an idea that you have into an app. And I think that goes to like basically the idea that like with programming skills, you can build anything. Is that how you look at like the skill set that you have and that you're continuing to build, that it enables you to do kind of whatever you want to?
Yeah, I guess prior to learning how to program at all, I didn't have any experience with this, and I just didn't know this was something I could do,
Yeah.
you know, and also, as a female, I just didn't know if it's something I would want to pursue, if I would be any good at it, and I kind of saw that as a challenge, as a way to encourage me to continue learning. And then when I realized what programming would provide for me, like I said, taking an idea and bringing it to life,
Yeah.
basically, and then saying I did this,
Hmm.
I love that. It's empowering, and yeah, it's just awesome.
I love it. Yeah, and not to mention to get paid for all of that too. I think is the icing on the cake. And I will say like I I don't know if you think of yourself this way too, and I don't want it to sound super cliche, but I do think it's true. Like you as a woman in tech and your story, now you are one of those like inspirational people that you would have looked up to and looked for on Twitter, like when you were getting into it, right? Like again, I don't want this to be super cliche, but now you kind of prove that story, right? So when people have that doubt for themselves of can I get into tech as a woman? Can I be successful in tech as a woman? Like you are one of many successful stories, but you're also just one of those people that is visible to a certain extent on Twitter that people can see your experience and hopefully encourage them to do the same thing or at least have the idea that it's possible. And I think that's the I've had like just thinking about women in tech and like different issues in America. I think one of the thing that's has been an epiphany for me is that level of visibility that the thing you may or may not be interested in is possible. And like white male, like you see white men doing everything. And I've never really thought about that. Like I've never really sat back and thought like,
Sure.
hey, there's nothing I think I can't do because I see a white male doing every one of those things. And it's different for races and sex and everything. But especially for women in tech, like you see more women in tech and you for other women or girls as they're growing up to see those now they're starting to realize that those opportunities are happening more and more and that they could do it too. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think being able to share that, especially if you got into doing blog posts and stuff like that, I think there would be a lot of value in the experiences that you have to share.
Yeah, yeah, and I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity, because I follow these women that will do interviews or whatever, and talk openly about their experiences, and I think, wow, that's really cool. That is inspiring to me,
Hmm.
which is why I'm kind of trying to step out of my comfort zone and do things like this, so that I can continue encouraging people and helping them to realize that they can do it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love to be able to highlight all those things for the exact same reason. The last thing, if and you've got several in here, so I've got the notes in case you don't remember what you submitted on the original form. But any community
Yeah.
shout outs, any specific like groups that you want to shout out that you've worked with, or just kind of get some visibility to.
Oh man, let me see here.
And
Pull up my notes.
I've got them too. If you want me to read them out to you, and you can add some
Yeah,
contact.
actually, that would be yeah, that would
Yeah.
be good.
So Twitter, we talked about that. You've got that listed here of just how amazing Twitter has been.
Huge.
And then a
Yeah.
couple of accounts or maybe hashtags. I'm not exactly sure, but women who code and diversity or diversify tech are two
Diversified tech.
two on Twitter that you mentioned.
Yeah, those
And
are huge.
then on Discord, you've got the Odd Life Developer Collective and the Level Up Crew. Do you want to tell me a
Yeah,
little
my
bit
friends.
about those? Yeah.
Yeah, those are people that I met on Twitter that started, their little Discord groups and invited me, and I thought it was super cool. And people are always going in there and chatting about just random things that they're working on, how their day is going. It's just nice to have these little communities to, grow with
Hmm.
and grow friendships with. It's really nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, like one of the number one things I think for me as people are learning and even beyond that, especially beyond that, is getting some sort of community, like some sort of group that you trust, that you can ask those questions, you can be a little vulnerable with, you can share experiences, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then two more you got on Slack, JavaScript KC. So I think that's the one that you mentioned, is how you got your first job, was reach
Slack.
message in that one. And then the Kansas City Women in Tech, or Women in Technology, is another Slack group.
Right.
I love the reaction
Yeah.
for each one. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I kind of totally forgot about them. But yeah, that's an amazing community here in Kansas City. They do stuff like coding and cocktails, where they
Nice.
have a big room and women can go in and bring their laptops, and we do cocktails and food and learn HTML. The next time, learn CSS. That's yeah, really really nice.
It's, I think it's really special how much the tech communities have grown. And again, going back to visibility, in this case specifically for women in tech, like you see more and more of those types of events and organizations, and just trying to help women, young women, girls, as they're growing up again, see things, see possibilities that they may not have seen before. So yeah,
Yeah,
I love that you're able to highlight a few of those.
yeah,
um, Mac had asked what your goals were for the future in terms of development career, but I think you touched on that. Just kind of
mm,
said like, and I think especially early on, this is the number one thing, is just like want to continue to grow and learn in the stuff that you're doing now, because there's so
yeah,
much. You're doing it professionally for the first time over the last 5 or 6 months total, but still pretty early on in your career in that sense. So I think I imagine that's what most people would say, is I'm just trying to take in everything I can and learn everything I can for the
yes,
time being. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cool. I think that is, I think that'll about do it. That's all the notes that I had. I think that's all the questions that we had from the chat. Kyle, it's been great to like virtually meet
Yeah,
you over camera. Hopefully we'll get
yeah,
to see each other in September at KCDC.
yeah.
Um, Thanks everyone as always for hanging out in the chat. It makes it that
Thank
much more
you.
fun to have people contributing and asking questions and that sort
Yeah.
of stuff. So thanks for being here. I don't see any, actually, do I, is coding? Yeah, I'm gonna rate everyone over to Coding Garden. Are you familiar with rating in Twitch?
No.
Okay, no
Is that
worries.
when you like have people go view someone else's stream?
Yeah, so I can
Okay.
send everybody that's in our stream over to Coding Garden, and Coding Garden is one of the bigger streamers in the uh, industry. I don't know what I don't know if tech streaming is an industry, but he's one of the bigger channels in
Cool.
tech streaming. My computer's being a little slow, and this may not work because now it's not showing me the menu that I'm supposed to see. It's loading. Anyway, hopefully this will rate everyone over in a few seconds, but I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the stream, and then I will catch everyone later. Thanks again, Kyla, for joining. Thanks everyone for being here, and I will see you next time.
Thank you.